If Donald Trump and the rest of the GOP continue campaigning this year based on demonizing Hispanic Americans, they might find that the upcoming election is going to be a pretty tough one to win. And we've got some numbers that prove that. The National Association of Elected and Appointed Officials projects 13.1 million Hispanics will vote nationwide in 2016, jumping up almost 2 million since 2012. And wow, that's about 50% growth since 2008.
Wow.
So since the last presidential election, the Hispanic share of the vote is going to jump up by about 50%. And that's just an expectation. It could be that with some of the rhetoric that we're seeing, that number could be even higher. And this is important. So there are a lot of Hispanic groups and Democratic groups that are trying to register as many Hispanic Americans as possible. Here's why that's so important. Only about 48% of eligible Hispanics vote, but nearly 80% of registered Hispanics go to the ballot box. And so if you do a lot of outreach, not even nationwide, if you focus it on a couple of important states, which is going on right now, then theoretically a couple of extra million voters, that by itself, not even worrying about the Muslim aspect, the female aspect, and all of that, that can win you a presidential election right there.
Mm-hmm. I think that given some new information that we have from polls and the data that we have about voters right now, if you are very much concerned with someone like Trump being our next president, the forecast is looking nice, okay? Because on one hand, he continues to disparage female voters and put them down and claim that, oh, all of Hillary Clinton's female voters are voting for her because she's a woman, right? Pretty sure that you're not going to win them over by making statements about them like that. And then at the same time, you see the spike in voter registration among Hispanics. This is speculation on my part. I'm not 100% sure. But I'm guessing you're seeing that spike because they realize that the stakes are high.
Yeah.
Right? You have this man who very clearly and very transparently hates you. And so you have an interest in making sure that he doesn't get elected. So I think that's part of the reason why you're seeing this uptick in Hispanic registration.
Yeah. Yeah, and look, if this was the reason that, let's say it's Trump and say it's Hillary, just hypothetically, if this is the reason that Trump ends up losing, how sweet would that be?
Oh, it'll be real sweet.
Because like we've experienced now over the course of like 10 months, all the things that he's said, and he's attacked different groups. He wants to punish women for having an abortion. He wants to stop all Muslims from entering the country. But the first thing he said was that Mexicans are rapists and murderers. Like he started, the foundation for his campaign was demonizing Hispanics. He eventually spun it off into a couple of other series, but that was the first one. And so it would be so great, it would be poetic justice if that was what brought him down. Now, is there any reason to believe that it's Trump as opposed to something else, the economy, or how awesome the Democratic Party is, that's doing this? There is some data. 80% of respondents in a poll of registered Hispanic voters in Colorado and Nevada said Trump's views on immigration made them less likely to vote for Republicans in November. In Florida, that number was 68%.
Wow.
Those are, of course, all important potential swing states, some of them with significant numbers of delegates in it.
So it doesn't surprise me that the percentage is a little lower in Florida. And this is based on this is based on anecdotal evidence that I have, but in speaking with a lot of Cuban American voters, they don't necessarily have the same disdain for Trump that a lot of other Hispanic Americans do. Mm-hmm. And part of the reason why is because, they have amnesty, right? When they talk about building that wall and how they want to keep Mexicans out, I've talked about this on the show before. It drives me crazy because you guys are immigrants, but you got amnesty. The country decided, hey, you know what? We want to give these people amnesty because of communism, but we don't want to give amnesty to other, Latinos that are dealing with insane persecution in their own countries, right? Or insane violence in their own countries, and they're trying to escape that. So Mexico, for instance, has this big problem with cartel violence, where people are getting decapitated or they're getting hung by bridges by some of these massive drug cartels.
Yeah.
I don't know why we don't want to give them amnesty, but we're okay with giving Cubans amnesty.
We don't want to give Syrians amnesty.
We don't want to give Syrians amnesty.
The tragedy doesn't seem to matter for some reason.
Exactly. So yes, that's just my very long way of telling you I'm not surprised that the number is a little lower in Florida.
In Florida specifically, yeah. Now, why are we talking about these three particular states? One, because these are areas where Democrats and groups that represent Hispanic American voters have already begun their outreach and trying to get people to register to vote as early as possible to get that number as high as possible. The other reason is that theoretically, if the Democrats were to win Colorado, Nevada, and Florida, 3 very important states where they have a very good chance of winning, especially if Hispanic voter turnout is high, if they win those, Democrats could actually lose the swing state of Ohio that we always talk about every election, but win either Pennsylvania or Wisconsin, great chance of winning Wisconsin, and then get to 270 simply by holding other states that have voted for the Democratic nominee in presidential elections for the last 6 cycles. So states that we expect will stay blue. If they win these 3 fairly Hispanic-dominated states, then they don't, like Ohio, whatever. We don't even have to worry about Ohio, which, by the way, if Kasich was the nominee, he'd have a much better chance of winning. And so it's a little bit early for us to be getting into the electoral map and figuring out exactly what the path to victory is. But this is showing that simply with the rhetoric on the right, new paths are opening. And we can talk about the polling nationally, but at the end of the day, the national polls don't matter. It's the state polls that matter. And if you can get to 270 and they can't, then you can't lose. It's what I think is unique about this in distinction to some of the other groups that Trump has maligned. I think that Trump has this idea that he's going to suddenly turn and he's going to be more professional. And he's not going to attack people, and people will start to forget. And I think that considering the way that the media operates and the amount of attention that most people give to politics, it's possible that some of the ways he's attacked people could be forgotten. But I think that this is an area where it's not going to happen. I think that considering how incendiary the rhetoric was from day one, how often he's returned to it, how much he loves that wall line, I think that this is an area that he will never win over again. And considering how important it is in terms of the upcoming general election, I think that is very good news if you don't want to see a Trump presidency.
Absolutely. I think it's definitely true of Trump, but it's been increasingly clear for Republicans, especially because they have failed in reaching out to Latino voters, to Hispanic voters. They continue to demonize them. They continue to ignore or neglect some of the problems that they're facing in the country. And the reality is it's a growing population in this country.
Yeah.
So it's been hurting them in the past, and it's going to continue hurting them even more in this upcoming election.